What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new episode of the 8 Below Show. Welcome everyone to 8 Below. Thanks for being here, guys, to the best entertainment related show here on YouTube. And I'm super excited about our episode here today. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. As I've said in the past, guys, and on the YouTube channel, which you guys can, go through the videos on the YouTube channel and see where I've talked about Assassin's Creed, and I've been pretty overly critical of this franchise at times. But in this first segment of the show, I want to talk about Assassin's Creed 5 or Assassin's Creed Ragnarok, whatever you want to go by at this point, because it hasn't been 100% confirmed yet, and the title, of course, hasn't been confirmed yet either. So I want to talk about, we're just going to go, for the sake of this video, Assassin's Creed 5 and why this game should exist. So let's talk about it. So guys, Assassin's Creed, I've been critical of it. They've kind of had this model and this thought process, it seemed, at least in my eyes, that being Ubisoft, that they want Assassin's Creed to be the Call of Duty of Ubisoft. And obviously, that has translated to not really working out in a number of ways. If we look at the track record and the history of Assassin's Creed up to this point, it just really has not connected well. I mean, I kind of lost interest after Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, and we've had a number of games after that as well. So why do I think Assassin's Creed 5, even though it's had this shaky history of having significant peaks and valleys, as does every major AAA franchise, why do I think that Assassin's Creed 5 should exist? Well, I'll tell you why, guys. I feel like between, the Assassin's Creed games, okay, they were making games every year. Now it's been a little while since we had an Assassin's Creed title, and I think that they've had time to kind of look at what they've done right, wrong, and what they can do different moving forward in the Assassin's Creed franchise. I think it's a title, guys, and a franchise that deserves to continue without a doubt. I mean, it's one of those very recognized names in all of gaming, and at some point or another, most people who are big into gaming have come across Assassin's Creed and have certainly played some of the games. I know I certainly have, and it was actually one of my favorite games for a number of years, guys, since the first Assassin's Creed all the way to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. And then, obviously, I played some of the other ones. I've played pretty much every single Assassin's Creed game that's come out. Some of them I've played longer than others, and I've noticed a trend that I really haven't liked ever since Assassin's Creed 4, and that is just, it's almost like they got kind of complacent and the story really they had an identity crisis, essentially, with Assassin's Creed. In my opinion, the story just kind of started going in a million different directions, and it just I couldn't really see where Ubisoft was trying to take the story. And we've seen this in as far as sales are concerned, as well as just the sheer amount of players actually playing these games. It has dropped, and it really, over time, it hasn't done very well, probably ever since the fourth game, because Black Flag, a lot of people really liked, and I think it was one of the best. I know a lot of people think the second one was the best, but Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag was a lot of fun. And so I think if they get back to the roots, guys, of what this game, what this game really kind of was all about. And I think Assassin's Creed 5, if you're kind of continuing, somewhat around that same storyline as Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, I think they might be onto something. Hopefully, there's a number of reasons and number of things I think need to change, obviously, for Assassin's Creed to be put into the right direction. One of those being, guys, I don't like the concept of having to, while you're getting, diving into the single player story, Ubisoft basically forces you to do side missions in order to continue the main story, and that kind of takes you out of the story, and I just don't like that concept. I don't like the idea of having to be forced to do those side stories. I like doing those on my own, at my own pace. So that'd be kind of number one. But we could go into the story, the lore of Assassin's Creed all day, and we could probably talk about what direction they need to go in. Assassin's Creed 5 is being rumored to be in the Viking era of Norse mythology, and so That is a concept that I think pretty much I'd be down with. I think that sounds somewhat like a good place to maybe start to see where where they can go with it. There was a time, guys, where I felt, especially in like Odyssey and Origins, there was during those games and even some of the other games as well, where I really felt that it didn't feel like you were an assassin. Like, it didn't feel like you were one of these assassins from the Creed. And it just felt that you were just like some other, just some random person out there that, in those times, whether it was the Roman times, the Egyptian times, whatever time period. And it didn't really feel like you were even training to become an assassin. I mean, you just were a person who had some pretty great abilities and such, but it just didn't feel like you were Ezio or you were, some of these other, iconic figures in Assassin's Creed. And I really want us to go back to that feeling of, you're an assassin and of more stealth than action. And that kind of leads me to the second thing, which is that Ubisoft kind of moved away from what made Assassin's Creed so good in a number of ways, but another one would be stealth. Stealth was such a huge part of Assassin's Creed for a number of the years that they were making these games, and then all of a sudden, they kind of moved away from that. And it's more of like this action RPG game. And we know what happens when you try to do these things. Like, I'll give you an example, Dead Space. It's a horror-based shooter that in the third game, they decided to go into this action horror, and it really didn't land well, and we haven't had another Dead Space since Dead Space 3. So just an example, and there's hundreds of different games and franchises that this has happened to, where you have an identity crisis, and that's exactly what's happened with Assassin's Creed. Now, hopefully, with the time, between games here, hopefully they're going to make something pretty special here with Assassin's Creed 5, and I'm hoping they go back to the roots. Why it should exist? Because this is a cult classic game at this point, guys. They have built an incredible following around Assassin's Creed. It deserves to continue without a doubt, and I believe that it certainly will. And I think that it's going to live up to, our hype and expectations as far as, obviously we're going to have to wait to see, our first looks at the game and such and see what direction they're going in. But I can tell you guys this, Origins and Odyssey, when I saw the trailers and I saw everything that they were trying to do with those two games in particular, because they were, obviously, recent memory here, right, guys, with those two titles, it just didn't feel like Assassin's Creed at that point. At the end of the day, I said, like I was telling you guys, I keep saying this in this video, that they have an identity crisis at this point. It didn't look or feel like Assassin's Creed. It looked and felt like something different. Now, the mechanics of when you're playing it kind of felt like an Assassin's Creed when you're running and all of those different things, but it just didn't look like an Assassin's Creed title, because everyone knows what Assassin's Creed was and what it is now, and hopefully they kind of can right the ship in the right direction. Let's put it that way. But should Assassin's Creed 5 exist? Because I've gotten the question, do I think that Assassin's Creed should be a franchise that continues? I absolutely think it is, guys. It's a franchise that just kind of lost its way and it needs to kind of come back. I can give you another example like Call of Duty, which is the best-selling game every single year that they have a new game that comes out. It lost its way. Every big franchise has lost its way at some point or another. Call of Duty lost its way when it decided to start using jetpacks and such in 3 titles. Not just one title to just try it out. 3 titles, guys. They had jetpacks, and it split the community in so many different ways, even though it was still the best-selling game each of those years. But they found their way back, moving into World War II after Infinite Warfare and then Black Ops 4 and now with Modern Warfare. And now they are back to continuing that climb. All games, guys, and franchises, the goal is just to continue this incline. There's going to be peaks as well as valleys, and those valleys sometimes come in these video games at different times throughout the course of their histories. And Assassin's Creed certainly has had its peaks and valleys, like I said. But that doesn't mean, guys, that all it takes is one game to really hurt a franchise, and it takes one game to bring it right back to where it was. And I think Assassin's Creed 5 could very well be that, as long as they take their time and they go back to the roots of what made Assassin's Creed so great in the first place. But I would love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about Assassin's Creed and Assassin's Creed 5? What direction do you think they need to go in? Do you guys like the newest editions of Assassin's Creed, or do they need to go back to the older, more, traditional games and what built this franchise from the ground up? Let me know what you guys think, and for more Assassin's Creed 5 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. I want to talk about in the second segment of the show about Perfect Dark. This was a game, guys, and a franchise that dates back to 2000. And obviously, guys, it really had its reign of time up to this point until 2010. For about a decade, this franchise was pretty popular, without a doubt. I mean, it dates back to the Nintendo 64, guys. So it's definitely a title that is no stranger to gaming. And I want to talk about what happened to Perfect Dark. So let's talk about it. So, guys, as I said, as far as the release timeline is concerned, regarding Perfect Dark, it dates back to 2000. You had Perfect Dark as well as Perfect Dark on the Nintendo Boy Color, or I should say the Game Boy Color and the Nintendo 64. So you had it come out on both of those, and then 5 years later, you get Perfect Dark Zero, which was pretty much the first game that I actually played in the Perfect Dark franchise. And I remember 5 years after that came Perfect Dark, which came out on the Xbox 360. And that was probably the most iconic, in my opinion. I really enjoyed Perfect Dark on the 360, but I don't know if everyone liked it on the 360, guys. It's a very interesting ordeal because Perfect Dark was set in the year 2020. We haven't seen or heard anything about Perfect Dark coming back. Where did this game go at this point, and are we going to see a continuation of it in the future? In an article, guys, that was written by Cody Peterson of Screen Rant, the game franchise Perfect Dark was set in the 2020s, but now that it is 2020, Rare acts as if they have shelved the game for the indefinite future. The video game Perfect Dark was set in the 2020s, but now that the future is actually here, where has the popular franchise gone? The original Perfect Dark game was developed by the studio Rare and released for the Nintendo 64 in 2000 to both player and critical acclaim. The game did well enough to achieve Nintendo's Player Choice Award and is typically cited as one of the greatest video games ever released. There was even a sequel on the Xbox 360 in 2005, which did relatively well despite critics feeling as though it did not live up to the expectations set by its predecessor. And that's probably one of the big things, guys, was that I never played it on the Nintendo 64. Obviously, I'd seen footage, but playing it on the 360, it was kind of all new to me, so I really enjoyed it. But the critics are the ones who felt that it just didn't meet those expectations that were set by, of course, the original Perfect Dark on the Nintendo 360. The original Perfect Dark was a first-person shooter which, along with its spiritual prequel, GoldenEye 007 on the N64, completely changed the world of video games. Players guided protagonist Joanna Dark through a series of missions and spent the majority of the game shooting bad guys, deploying gadgets, and completing various objectives in order to prevent an alien invasion of Earth. Perfect Dark shooting mechanics and complex enemy AI made it revolutionary for the Nintendo 64 and the time period in which it released. The game had several multiplayer options, allowing players to play cooperatively or competitively during either story campaign or throughout Perfect Dark's plethora of multiplayer modes, and it even received an HD remake for the 360. So look, guys, really quick, one thing I want to mention is the fact that this was even a great multiplayer experience in today's day and age. We're coming up with, obviously, we're in the year of the PS5 as well as the Xbox Series X. And, I mean, obviously, gaming has changed over the years, but one of those things that has really changed is back in the day, guys, video games were meant to be really story-played games where you were playing a story, and then it changed to becoming more of a multiplayer focus, and that's pretty much where everybody is at this point, is multiplayer. A lot of people have forgotten about a lot of those single-player stories. This is a game that really kind of merges all those things in one and could do really well in today's market, in my opinion. The company behind Perfect Dark, Rare, is well known for having created titles and games that were integral to a lot of gamers' childhood. Rare also worked on titles like Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong Country, and Viva Pinata, along with many others. After many years of working with Nintendo, the company was finally acquired by Microsoft in 2002 Despite receiving favorable reviews for most of the games produced for their new owner, Rare Games, excluding the sequel titled Perfect Dark Zero, tended to sell very poorly, and Microsoft finally restructured the company around 2010. From there, Rare seemed to move away from their usual quirky and innovative franchises and tended to work on Kinect games and multiplayer titles like Sea of Thieves. So, here's step number 2, guys. Any time that there's a franchise that has been kind of just set aside or put on an indefinite hiatus really comes down to a number of things. Number 1 is usually sales. 2 is usually some type of critical reception that is like, that of negative or, generally favorable or even average at best. It usually comes down to those 2 main things. And number 3 is usually if, the main developer or the publishers are thinking that their resources for a company like Rare to move into a different direction or move into a different IP. So it's kind of like the big 3 usually. So number 1, guys, bad reception, of course, on Perfect Dark on the Xbox 360. Number 2 was poor sales. And so those 2 things don't really go well together, certainly. And so then Rare, of course, moved on to Sea of Thieves. So that could be probably where Microsoft decided just to kind of move them in that direction. Perfect Dark was innovative and groundbreaking when it came out over 20 years ago. And it's strange Microsoft would buy a company just to later discard their more popular franchises. A large portion of gamers can remember late nights with their friends playing the deathmatch mode and marveling at the amazing visuals and game mechanics. To this day, there are still those who try and beat speedruns or break other records centered around the game. Maybe one day Rare will return to its roots and grace fans with another Perfect Dark entry. But for now, it seems like they are content to work within Microsoft's umbrella on other unrelated titles. So look, guys, here's the thing. I feel that Perfect Dark is another franchise that deserves to coexist. And I think it would do very well if it were to release with the Xbox Series X as well as, of course, like the PlayStation 5. I think that would be something that could be really special. Now, Microsoft owns Rare, so it would probably be an Xbox exclusive. But the fact of the matter is why isn't this game coming out? Obviously, guys, the biggest things, like we already said, sales as well as critical reception. Those were pretty negative, right, around some of these games. And so I would say that at this point, Perfect Dark, you can never say never, like it'll never come back, but it's in probably an indefinite hiatus at this point, guys. And I hope that it comes back at some point, really given, a fresh breath of life, so to speak, on the next generation consoles. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys want to see another Perfect Dark game? And what do you guys really think happened to the Perfect Dark franchise? Let me know in the comment section below. And for more Perfect Dark content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. One of the most anticipated movies of the year is No Time to Die, guys. This is the next James Bond film. Super exciting. I'm not going to lie, guys. After watching the initial trailers for this, I am extremely excited. I'm a huge James Bond fan, especially Daniel Craig James Bond. He's my favorite James Bond up to this point. And I've seen most of the James Bond movies, and so I'm really excited about this one. Now, I'm going to say this, that Quantum of Solace, Casino Royale. Casino Royale is really probably still my favorite Daniel Craig James Bond movie. It's probably one of, if not my favorite James Bond movie ever, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of some back history as far as my favorite James Bond movies. Now, Skyfall, I think that pretty much all of them have been, entertaining nonetheless. If anything, they've been very entertaining, and I'm excited to see where this franchise goes with No Time to Die. It looks really intriguing, and I think it's going to possibly be the best one yet for a number of reasons. But let's talk about everything that we know so far about the movie. So guys, the biggest things are, this is the 25th installment of the James Bond film series, and this is being filmed by Cary Joji Fukunaga. And this is a movie that's had its release date pushed back to none other than November 25th of 2020 here in the United States. And there's a number of, obviously, the main reason, of course, is because of the pandemic going on in our world right now. But Nonetheless, I think it's going to be worth the wait. I really do. The cast here, guys, you got Daniel Craig, Rami Malek, Leah Sado. I mean, guys, this is an incredible cast. I mean, you've got Ben Whishaw, Lashana Lynch, you got Jeffrey Wright, Christoph Waltz. I mean, guys, and the list goes on and on. You have a really stellar cast here. One of, if not maybe the best that they've had in a single James Bond movie, potentially, all going to be on the screen for this movie of a budget of $250 million budget. So they're banking that this is going to be a big James Bond film, to say the least, guys. So originally, this movie was scheduled to release in April, but of course, because of the pandemic, it's moved onwards to November. And in an article, guys, that was written by Tom Nicholson of Esquire, No Time to Die was slated for an April 2 release, but on March 4th, the Bond Twitter feed announced it would instead arrive on November 12th. Of course, the pandemic wasn't specifically mentioned in the tweet, but given that 38% of Spectre's box office takings came from countries currently curbing public events and gatherings, it's not an enormous leap of understanding. No Time to Die is the first major film to change its release schedule because of fears of the pandemic and may set a pattern which other production and distribution companies will follow, which of course we've already been seeing that, guys. Now, what I will say is that Spectre was another, was of course another one of those, James Bond movies that I wasn't as big of a fan of as, a lot of other people were. I thought Spectre was really good, but I just didn't think it was quite as good as Skyfall or even Quantum of Solace. And of course, Casino Royale was probably my favorite of of the Daniel Craig James Bond movies. But Spectre, coming off of that, my expectations, I'm not going to say are low because they're actually really high, but I'm expecting this to be significantly better than what Spectre was. Okay, so some of the other things that we know so far about the film, guys. It's the longest Bond film ever, which of course kind of leads you with some question marks, but at 163 minutes, exactly 2 hours and 43 minutes in old money, No Time to Die will be 15 minutes longer than Spectre, the previous holder of the record, according to the American film chain Regal. We had been led to believe that it could touch almost 3 hours when a Russian cinema chain suggested that much back in January, but since then, the Dutch Path chain has also suggested it'll be 2 hours and 43 minutes on its booking portal. So 2 hours and 43 minutes it is. Craig's tenure as Bond has been one of records. Not only have we now seen the two longest Bond films in that time, but Craig has become the longest serving Bond of them all. He passed Sir Roger Moore's mark of 4,527 days in the role on April 11th, 2019. That's really impressive. And I want to see Daniel Craig continue being Bond. Hard to say if this is going to be his very last one. I know there was talks of Idris Elba becoming the next 007, which I think would be really interesting. I think that would be great. But I think that Daniel Craig's tenure as James Bond, it might be coming to an end, but maybe he's got a couple more films left in him. Kiri Fukunaga says it's Bond's most difficult mission ever. In a new teaser video, the No Time to Die director got on the hype train, promising that Craig's final spin as 007 will be his most challenging and difficult posting yet. He also mentioned that Bond has been retired for a full 5 years by the beginning of No Time to Die. So look, people have said that this will be Craig's last, last time that he plays as 007. But here's the thing, is that he was saying that it was the last time he was going to play 007, I think it was like 2 movies ago, and he still has continued playing as Bond. So I'm not going to say that this is not going to be his last movie. I just hope they may have a couple more left in the tank. But nonetheless, I'm really excited to see this take on a Bond that's been retired for 5 years. It was essential to rediscover Bond. Where is he? He says, after 5 years of retirement, who has he become? He's sort of a wounded animal struggling with his role as a 00. The world's changed. The rules of engagement aren't what they used to be. The rules of espionage are darker in this era of asymmetric warfare. Now, Billie Eilish's theme song has landed, so Billie Eilish is going to be the one who does the No Time to Die theme song, which I'm really interested to see that, guys. That's going to be a very, obviously, it's going to be interesting to see what she can do versus other very popular, artists when it came to the Bond universe, to say the least. But so what is actually going to happen to within this movie? Everyone in the Bond franchise presumably lives in fear of accidentally letting something slip in an interview or while chatting to a mate, and then being spirited away for an unceremonious sea burial somewhere in Scapa Flow. However, Ben Whishaw, who plays Q, has a broken cover to give us a bit of a pointer. It's Daniel's last film as James Bond, so I think what they can look forward to is a kind of summing up, I guess, of all of the previous Bond films that Daniel's done. Whishaw told Collider during a chat at Sundance Film Festival. There are strands from all of the films in it, kind of reaching a conclusion. It was great, he said, and what was amazing is that he treated it, or was able to approach it. It felt to me almost as if it were an independent film. Sometimes quite chaotic, but I'm very excited to see how he's constructed the final film. Of course, there's been a trailer that's come out, guys, and that trailer was absolutely amazing. I'm super excited to see what this movie looks like. Didn't really give out too much information, I didn't think, which a lot of Hollywood movies do these days. I'm very glad that they've given us, they've given us kind of a slight premise, but really showing us that this is going to be very action-packed, it looks like. Obviously, Daniel Craig is back for a 5th film as Bond, and regulars from his tenure will be returning too. We'll see Naomi Harris as Eve Moneypenny, Ralph Fiennes as M, Ben Whishaw as Q, and Jeffrey Wright as CIA agent Felix Leiter, as well as Leah Sado. New characters include Lashana Lynch's Nomi, a fellow MI6 agent who will take the 007 codename while Bond is off duty. Most importantly, there's Rami Malek as Safin, a supervillain who Barbara Broccoli described as a nasty piece of work who gets under Bond's skin. And then as far as the writers go, guys, longtime Bond writers Neil Purvis and Robert Wade worked on a script before Danny Boyle was attached to direct, but then Boyle brought in his regular collaborator John Hodge, who did Shallow Grave, Train Spotting, and The Beach. But Boyle walked in August 2018, citing creative differences. That meant Purvis and Wade's script was revived and reworked, first by its original writers, then by Casino Royale writer Paul Haggis. Finally, it was given a polish and extra laughs by Fleabag creator Phoebe Waller-Bridge at Daniel Craig's request. Now, who's actually directing it? Having helmed Skyfall and Spectre, which I loved Skyfall, didn't like Spectre, Sam Mendes was in the early mix but quickly ruled himself out. Christopher Nolan's name was discussed, but he demurred as well. Next, Denis Villeneuve passed due to commitments with Dune. Danny Boyle signed on in February 2018, only to leave 6 months later, at which point enter Cary Fukunaga, who previously directed the good series of True Detective and Netflix Beasts of No Nation. So I'm okay with Cary Fukunaga. I think it's gonna be great. I really do. Now look, is it gonna be as great as like if it was Christopher Nolan or Denis Villeneuve? I just like seeing people, directors that haven't done like massive movies. Like Christopher Nolan and of course Sam Mendes, who's already kind of had his hands in the 007 universe. I kind of like to see someone else get a shot at it and really see what kind of like creative, what kind of story they're able to tell. Because I'll tell you this, guys, Netflix's Beasts of No Nation was really good in my opinion. I didn't think I was going to like it that much, but man, it was a really great story. And so I'm really excited to see what Cary does, of course, with the 007, this last tenure, according to many, of Daniel Craig. Now, as far as other things, guys, we know that there is, of course, a lot of question marks around this story and around like the music, which a lot of people love, hearing about the music. There's questions about what's the setup here. We know that at the start of No Time to Die, Bond is kicking back in Jamaica after the exertions of Spectre and isn't on active service. However, Felix Leiter pops up to say hello and ask if Bond wouldn't mind helping him find a scientist who's wandered off. It soon turns out the scientist has been abducted, and Bond gets onto the trail of a mysterious villain armed with dangerous new technology, according to Universal's synopsis. Plus, it sounds like we'll be digging into Madeline Swan's mysterious personal history too. So that's very interesting. Still very mysterious though. Is it definitely Daniel Craig's last Bond film? And all I will say about this, guys, is that they're saying that it is, okay? But there is a very good chance that he will do another one at some point. Now, that's the presumption that everyone's going in with, and it certainly feels like the cycle might be coming to an end, given that we'll be returning to the arc, which started with his first film, Casino Royale. Given the heartwarming and slightly inabbreviated speech he gave at the wrap party, it seems that he knows he's come to the end of his shift as Bond. He's now inhabited Bond suits longer than any other actor, so it would be a major surprise if he decided to return. But as a 52-year-old Sean Connery in a wig once said, never say never again. And with that, guys, the other thing, of course, we know that that this is a movie that's coming out later this year. Maybe it'll get pushed back again. It's hard to say. I hope it doesn't, but it very well might, just because of the pandemic going on. Give these guys time to obviously make a great story. I'm sure that it was basically fully done. They just aren't going to release it when, of course, there's a pandemic going on and people can't go to the movies. So they're going to give it some time and wait so that they can continue marketing and promoting, because I think this could be a really special James Bond movie. But that's everything that we know so far, guys. I will certainly keep you all up to speed as more information comes out for No Time to Die. And let me know, guys, in the comment section below, what are you guys the most excited about with this James Bond film? Do you think it's going to be the best James Bond film ever made, or do you think it's just going to really kind of seal the legacy of Daniel Craig as James Bond? And do you think it's the last James Bond tenure for Daniel Craig? Let me know what you guys think. And for more No Time to Die content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the 8 Below Show. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, stay positive, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.